Hello everybody, what is going on? Voodoo51292 back with you with my second book review. And the second book I'm going to be taking a look at today is actually the second book in the Hunger Games trilogy, which is called Catching Fire, also by Suzanne Collins. And I actually have the copy with me because I just finished this book last night. I stayed up pretty late last night. I basically read 200 pages of this book last night and finished it because I got very caught up in the book. So, just like I did with my last review of The Hunger Games, I'm going to be talking about Catching Fire, and I do want to say though that there is going to be spoilers in this review for the first book, for The Hunger Games. Not for Catching Fire, but for The Hunger Games, the first book, because I have to reference plot points from there for this book to make sense. So, if you haven't read the first book, or you haven't seen the first movie, I would recommend you not watch this review because it will be spoiled for you. But, Catching Fire, and if you're like me, after you read the first book, you may have been thinking, okay, well, there are some things that are still unresolved in the story. Basically, Katniss's love ordeal, for instance, between Peeta and Gale, and the fact that President Snow is now really pissed off at Katniss for what she did at the end of the Hunger Games event from the first game with the berries. Now, but you kind of think, okay, well, after the first book, most of the stuff seems to be resolved, though. How can they continue on a trilogy and make 2 more books? And the answer lies in the second unresolved issue that I mentioned, which is President Snow's anger with Katniss. And basically, she's become now like a political target for the Capitol because she has, in essence, defied the Capitol's rules and basically made a mockery of them in front of the entire nation. And obviously, they don't like that because the Capitol is all about control, and they feel like they've lost it. So, early on, President Snow basically visits Katniss and says, listen, obviously I'm very unhappy, I'm very, disgruntled with what you did, you defied the Capitol, and basically you're inciting or encouraging people in other districts to rebel and to start to have little uprisings in their districts, using you basically as their model for rebellion. And he said, you're really in trouble at this point because of what you've done. And of course Katniss and Peeta have to go on a victory tour around all the districts because they're the victor of the games, and they have to, parade around and give speeches to all the other districts. And President Snow says, listen, it's easy, people don't have a problem with Peeta, and they can easily buy that Peeta's actions, his participation in the berry incident, is purely because of his love for you. And, that's easy to buy because Peeta isn't really acting, because Peeta really does love Katniss. And he's very good with making people believe anything that he wants. And so the country already easily believes Peeta, that he just did it out of blind love. But for Katniss, they see it as more as an act of rebellion. And so he says, it's your job, Katniss, to convince people to the point where you even convince me that the act that you did was purely out of a blind love for Peeta and not any kind of rebellious act against the Capitol, so that people stop believing that. And basically threatens her and says, listen, it's very easy for me to, injure or punish the people around you, the people you love, if you don't do this. And so, obviously she has to go around on tour trying to convince people of her undying love for Peeta, and basically the entire time you can clearly see that the districts are becoming unhappy, and it seems like everything Katniss tries to do in order to convince people otherwise, she actually convinces them more that she's a rebel and gives all the other districts more firepower and more resolve to rebel. And so obviously things do not go the way Katniss would like. and obviously the capital. And so the whole premise of Catching Fire is basically that the districts are on edge, and they are really using Katniss as their motivation to start uprisings, to start rebellions, and obviously at that point it's pretty clear to Katniss that nothing she does is going to stop what she's inadvertently started. And the book kind of takes off from there, and takes off and talks about the problems that are ongoing in District 12 because of this, the fact that the capital begins to crack down very hard on the districts, sending in loads of peacekeepers, in fact replacing the head peacekeeper in District 12 with a much harder, much harsher head peacekeeper. There's an increase in punishments, and the entire time this is going on, people kind of forget, but obviously the Hunger Games has to continue, and with Katniss as a victor, she's most likely going to have to be a mentor to the next tributes from District 12. And so she's trying to deal with all of this stuff going on top of that. Now this is, the Hunger Games in this book is the 75th, which is called a quarter quell, which every 25 years they have one of these. And every quarter quell there's some special twist to the games. And the rules are kind of bent. And for like the 50th year, the second quarter quell, the twist was that every district had to send twice as many candidates. So you had 48 kids in the arena trying to kill each other. And this is the year that Haymitch won, was the second quarter quell. And so all of this stuff goes on, the book progresses through, and you get to the time of the quarter quell, and there's basically a bombshell drop as to the twist in the 75th Hunger Games, or the third quarter quell, that you really do not see coming, and I'm obviously not going to spoil it because I want you to read the book. But I can't go on too much more in the book without spoiling too much. So basically, once that happens, once this huge twist in the book happens, the book proceeds and continues from there. And like I said, I can't give much away because it's going to spoil it. So hopefully people didn't think my explanation there was too much of a spoiler anyway. I'm just setting the book up so that you know basically what the book is about, and the fact that, the title Catching Fire is kind of like, the districts are beginning to get restless and beginning to understand just how wrong and how just evil the capital is, and the fact that, hey, there's strength in numbers, and it's possible, we know it didn't work the first time, but there's a possibility that maybe now, with Katniss as this symbol of hope, that we can maybe move forward and overtake them. So that's basically the premise of Catching Fire. Now, a lot of people have said that Catching Fire, I've heard a lot of people say that Catching Fire is their least favorite book, that it is definitely worse than the first one. Not that it's necessarily a bad book, just that it's not as good as the first one. Now, I have not read the third one. I have not read Mockingjay yet, so I can't say whether or not this is my least favorite. But I really liked Catching Fire. I really liked the book. If I had to pick which one I probably did like more, I probably would say, upon the first readings of each, I probably enjoyed The Hunger Games more than I did Catching Fire, but they're very close in my mind. And I think the only reason I picked The Hunger Games over Catching Fire is because it's the first one. It's the one that gets you hooked. It gets you hooked into the series, and it's where you connect with all the characters, and so it's easy to pick the first one over the second one simply because of that. And I think that's the way it was. But there's certainly, obviously, all the themes, the commentary, social, political commentaries from the first one carry over to this one and get exaggerated. You start to understand the widespread effect that what Katniss did at the end of the Hunger Games. You start to understand now the effects of that and just how much she's done, completely unbeknownst to her and completely unwilling, but she's done it. And you start to understand that what she's started really cannot be stopped, and it's time to really start picking sides. Start deciding whether or not you're going to be part of this or if you're going to run away. And it's really interesting to see. There's definitely more character development, and you get some development of some characters that and learn more about them than you did in the first game, especially like Katniss's mother and some other individuals. You learn more about them in this book, and it's interesting to see early on which side of the fence that these characters stand on, and their positions, and what they feel about what's going on. And you understand it's very, very tough and difficult on Katniss, because not only does she have to pick, there's different people on either side. She's got people she cares about on one side, people she cares about on the other, as far as, do we run, do we stay and fight? And not only does she have to try to, in a way, pick who she wants to side with, but she also has to live with the fact that she's basically the reason for all of this, and she has to cope within her mind, either I'm this horrible evil person that's brought all this pain and misery on my nation and the people I love and care about, or do I view myself as sort of a hero, and this is what's needed to happen all along. All along we've needed to rebel against the Capitol because of how evil they are, or this will never end. And so she's torn on that. And then, of course, by the end of the book, there's a whole new slew of problems she has to deal with. So I really like the book. It's different. It's definitely a different tone than the first book. You see Katniss now as a very... Okay. My alarm just went off that I set. I set my alarm to go off, and I woke up before it and forgot to turn it off. Sorry about that, but anyway, Katniss, after the first book, is very hard and cold person, but in this next book, you really see her emotions come through. She's still a human, she's still a teenage girl, and you start to see the armor cracking, and as it would with anybody, even the strongest people, faced with this. So I really liked Catching Fire. I thought it was very good, and I'm very excited to jump in and read the third book, Mockingjay. Unfortunately, I can't get it for another week because I left it up at school, and I'm home for spring break, so I have to wait another week to get my hands on it and read it. But I'm excited to read it, and I can't wait to see how the story's going to end. They've set it up very well. And so certainly, if you read and liked the first book, Hunger Games, you definitely have to read Catching Fire. You've got to continue the story. I think you're going to really like it. You're going to like the twist at the end of it, or a third, or maybe, I would say it's 2/3 of the way through when this twist happens. I really liked it. I didn't see it coming. I think you'll like it too. And my recommendation, of course, if you read the first one, to read the second one, because it's a very good book as well, and sets things up nicely for the very last book in the trilogy. So, I'm Voodoo51292. This was my review of the book Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. Very excited for the film, which doesn't come out until November of next year, 2013. So it's a long time to wait. But when it does come out, I'm going to be seeing it very, very soon, and because I can't wait to see a film adaptation of this one. I think from a film adaptation novel, this one's going to be better than The Hunger Games. From a book adaptation, or from the book form, I would say probably the first one I would pick over this one, but as far as a film is concerned, I would think that this one, Catching Fire, is probably going to make a better film than the original Hunger Games. So, I can't wait. Hope you guys are excited, and hopefully you read Catching Fire. So, thank you guys very much, and I will see you after I read Mockingjay. I'm going to do a review of Mockingjay as well, and let you know what I think of the final book in the trilogy. So, thanks guys, and I hope to see you soon.